I don't know how many more it's going to let me. I'm going to send many as I can. I've been looking at comments in some of my videos, and when I'm on Brother Rich's channel, I see a lot of people saying I don't give references. And to those people that think I don't give references, you can't judge an interview for a study session. They're not the same thing. I teach with young elder, but I answer questions in interview format with Brother Rich. Different people be looking for different information. If you listen to what I'm saying, I don't have to give a reference. If I'm talking about control remote viewing, go look up control remote viewing. If I'm talking about telepathic communication, you look up telepathic communications, right? If I'm talking about the Van Allen belt and the Pleiadian light lock, go study the Van Allen belt. Just because I'm not giving you the direct sources that I'm drawing from, because a lot of them be psychic sometimes, so I can't give them to you. But everything that I'm saying is researchable. If you stop worrying about me giving you references and start listening to what I'm saying, I won't have to give you a reference because you'll use what I said to guide you to do research and investigation. I don't do debates because they're not relying, everybody's relying on third-party information. Nobody that wrote history is saying they seen it when it happened. They all writing shit down after the fact. So I can write something down after the fact, be it true or not, and be just as valid as all those other people. Because they making it up as they go anyway, because ain't none of this shit real. I'm just going to do a few more because it's letting me do a lot. It used to only let me do a limited number, but now okay, that's enough. Yeah. Hey. Yeah, it's a whole lot of people that be saying the same stuff. I'm not the only one saying what I'm saying. Look, it's chiefs all over the land that know we was already here. It's matriarchs all over the land that know we was already here. What most of us don't know is that a lot of the Native Americans that was brought in under the Dawes Act made treaties with us to be able to sit in our stead, but they had to learn our rituals. A lot of those tribes that we call reservation tribes and reservation Indians, they had a big mama from us, the ones that sided with us. We have to stop letting that divide and conquer of those ones who came as ceremonial tribes. This is how we view them on the land. The tribe that's not a direct blood link is a ceremonial tribe. You have to go back in history. When I tell you that if you don't know who the Moors was fighting from 711 to, I don't know who that is, I ain't gonna answer that, to 1493, 94 when they finally got kicked out of Europe. If you don't know who they took their slaves from and set their slave villages up in Europe, you won't know when it say in the history books and they brought 20 of their servants, 40 of their servants. They brought a cook. They brought their kitchen hands. They brought their skilled trades workers from those slave villages. Rome historically fought the Huns, right? And we know the Huns from Attila the Hun. They fought the Mongolians, which we call them Khans. The Amaru Khans is the allegiance that was made with the ones from over there. And we have to remember, a lot of us very chocolatey rich skin complexion still have from marrying on the West Coast that look that they commonly call Native American look, but you darker. That because you've been marrying into the tribes from over there since they was darker too. All of these lighter skinned people was Johnny come lately. Not to be a knock on skin color, but skin color is the tool used to enforce the artificial caste system. Now, who else did the Romans and the Greeks fight? They fought the Vedics. They fought what's known as the Barbary Wars. And the Barbary was those coming from the southeast of Rome. Well, you know, Rome is situated in Italy. Southeast is across the Mediterranean, going into what's known as the Indus Valley. So this is where they get your Vedic servants from, captured in warfare, moved to the slave village to add to an admixture of a gene pool in the slave villages. The slave villages was being dismantled by what they call them, inquisitors, as the Spanish Inquisition and the exiling of the Moors from France, Spain, Portugal, Denmark, and all of these places. While they was being kicked out, they were being shipped across the Pillars of Hercules into what's today known as Northwest Africa, Tunisia, Morocco, Libya, right? And they were being sent there first. That's before they came over here and brought their servants with them. Now, when they get over here and they bring in these people, these is the ones that they telling us they gonna replace us with if we don't win the Conjure War, snap out of the slumber, and remember we was already here, and that if we don't surrender or submit or abandon our birthright, they can't have it. We don't have to do nothing. All we got to do is let Trump finish tearing it down. So now everybody talking about the 9-star flag, but nobody's mentioned that there's 11 stripes. Right? So it's a 9/11 war flag under the eagle pendant facing to the war zone of the arrows. The arrows represent the tribes, right? And the tribes at war use arrows. Otherwise, he would have had a fistful of rifles. So, the war that's being fought is the restoration of the great law. But you had to undo the corporation and restore the republic so that the republic can restore the great law, or what we know in layman's terms as the common law. The common law is the de jure jurisdiction, right? The corporate jurisdiction is the de facto. The de facto government or system is the one that's pretending to be the correct system, but it's not. De facto means the fraud, or in fact, the fact of. And the fact of the matter is that they imposing a jurisdictional override on us because of our ignorance of the law. Therefore, they keep it in the forefront of our minds by reminding us that ignorance is no excuse of the law. Because you don't know the parameters and the guidelines by which you being enslaved, don't mean I got to tell you. I just got to keep it consistent enough for you to figure it out. Yep. Everything unraveling in our face. Trump tearing his home up. He's the liquidator. He's the CEO that comes in to liquidate the assets of the defunct corporation so that the asset can be put where it accurately go in order to pay the creditors for the debt incurred by the corporation. They owe it all to us. That's why when you're gonna know the flip because the bank's going to crash. They're going to close the banks. And when they open the banks back up, they're going to tell you that the national debt is the national debit for the government to restructure and rebuild. And they cover those assets with the confiscated gold that belonged to the people of this land that was being systematically stolen by the Crown of England and the Vatican and their cohorts. So when you don't know who you fighting, you're going to fight everybody, even your allies. So a lot of those, what we call $5 Indians and pretendians, is ceremonially adopted onto the land in order for them to be able to practice and learn our rituals. This how you can clearly see that 1-2-step method of teaching them how to do what we do by nature. It's natural for us to crip walk, bee walk, jitting. You know, it's natural for us to break dance. That's nothing new to us. It's the old Mississippian cultural fingerprints throughout the society to let you know we ain't never went nowhere. Right? And yeah, King, I wish I could dig him up, bring him back to life so I can murder his ass again. But that's a whole nother animal. So these people, feelings is hurt because Trump telling them y'all immigrants too. How do he know they immigrants if they've been here for 200-300 years? Because they got what's called an isolated gene pool. They gene pool because they only married within their tribe 90% of the time, and the ones who left the reservation and married into the other tribes across the land, they lost their ties to the res. Therefore, they not recognized as an immigrant no more. They didn't been absorbed into the population at large. And you don't see what's going on, you're going to be attacking people that don't deserve to be attacked. They took a lot of the weight, too, for this fight for liberation from the colonizers. When they got here, when they telling you people was running away from the slave master, it was them running to us. It wasn't us running to them. That's who the slaves was that came over here. If the paleface don't start coming to the mass Ellis Island immigration, and they needed the paleface in order to give us these false characters called white people. When the white people don't mean what you think white people mean. And that's why the trick works so well, because all the time, this nigga that's saying kill whitey is the goddamn white man, and you thinking he your ride or die when he your saboteur. He the one that was sent here in order to keep you from remembering who you was before you were bond servant to somebody for your errant activities on the land. Yep. So that's what they use to keep us from getting into business. Remember, and I keep telling people pay attention, and they're telling you who we are, but without telling you. We are the largest group of heritable landowners on the land, right? Ever since the system that we call America been in play, in this racist doctrine, we weren't allowed to buy property. We weren't allowed to participate in the day-to-day activities of banking. That's why we all had our own banks. We were not allowed to buy goods at wholesale prices. That's why you end up getting trapped and losing a lot of property and sharecropping agreements. But all of this heirs land that we have being blocked out of all of the institutions, where in the hell we get it from? Where we get all of this heritable property if we not from the land? Make it make sense. Where did all of these Negroes with the largest heirs property birthrights in the country? Ain't no pale faces got more heirs land on in America than people that look like me. So where in the hell did we get the land when we weren't allowed to purchase the land? We weren't allowed to participate in banking, but we making sharecropping agreements, losing land to the financiers or the bankers of the sharecropping institution of mortgages. Where we get the land? Who gave us the land? Where did we buy it at? There's no record of us buying it. It's only a record of us always being on it. They can't say that your great-great-grandfather and all that land he had, they can't tell you where he got it, who he bought it from. There's no deed that preceded him. There's nobody who held the land longer than us without people knowing where we get the land from. You have to analyze what they're telling you. You can't be the largest heritable land recipients without having some kind of structure that proves that you are heritable on the land. What do they know they're not telling us? Look this stuff up. Look up the largest heirs property owners in America. It's us. Where did we get the land when nobody was allowed to sell it to us? And then when the paleface came, they was giving them large plots of land under the salvage and squatters' rights. And then they was giving them financial incentives to mechanize their farms and to hire hands to help. Now we getting hired because we lost it in the sharecropping agreement, probably, or not. They just wrote the paperwork and said it was theirs. This is the hardest thing for us to get through our head. But once we get this part, that the only way we can have as much heirs property as they claim, we have to be the original heirs on the land. And they have to be aware of this. Now remember, the other people was just ceremonial tribes. They was like, we hired them to perform certain rituals on the land that we don't want interrupted during the conflict. So we teach it to them using the 1-2-step method, the same way you teach the hustle, the same way you teach square dance. But once they get the dances down and they can perform them, they become a full ceremonial tribe. We are spirit brothers according to the elders of the land. If they maintain our rituals, stop fighting them people. They ain't the ones that we supposed to be fighting. It's these niggas that look like us, that ain't us, that keep trying to convince us that we not from here when we been here. And we invited all of the people here that's supposed to be here that may not genetically be tied to the land as ceremonial support systems. You got to remember, it's 12 mitochondrial lines, 13 actually. The main line is what we call the Isis line. That's the 13th mitochondrial. All of the females' genome exists through that bloodline. Then you have what's known as the 12 daughters of Isis, often referred to in modern mysticism as the sisters of Eve or the daughters of Eve. This is because they don't want you to know the original earth tribes, all of us was melanated to one degree or another, but our melanin didn't take on the colors of the shades of brown because we was magnesium source metallic conversion, and now we iron based metallic conversion, and it rust is brown or orangish color, but the magnesium tarnishes and becomes shades of blue and green, right? So we don't remember that. That's why that racism shit worked so well. A lot of them people was being turned blue, where you get your Smurf story from, in the Appalachian Mountains with the silver water for sunscreen. But we don't know the culture of the land, and we don't know how we used to treat conditions of the foreigners that came. So if you don't know what we used to do, you don't know what is these stories telling you. They telling us the history, but they ain't telling us in the history class. They telling us in arts and entertainment. They telling us in the music. Right? Because they know we not going to trust the politicians. They already know this because they all slime balls puppets. And all of them is controlled from somewhere else. Somebody else control every politician in on the land. Now, the only place where you get where the people actually have control is what you call grassroots politics. That means your local government, your city council, your mayor, your sheriff. That's it. Police don't supposed to be here. They're slave catchers. The sheriff is supposed to be elected from among the people with the one with the most skills to be able to maintain order on the land with the least amount of resistance. The more skilled that the person is, the more likely he is to get elected as sheriff or sharif. Right? The birthright heir sharif on the land is Peastone Chief Malik Angel Bay. He is the blood right heir to enforce the rules of the mother's house, the Red House. And the rules of the Red House is how to regulate the land. That's his job, what he was born to do. He was held incapacitated as a bond servant by the corporate entity called the United States under a doctrine of COINTELPRO tied to a sub-doctrine called Readiness Exercise 1984. And the wall is the trigger to tell you how to activate it. And the wall is 45, right? That Desert Eagle. And the 45 is Trump. Trump sounds the trumpet, right? To let you know that the law had to be restored on the land in order to put the lawman back on the land. So first they had to tear down the corporation, remove the admiralty jurisdiction, go to the jurisdiction of the republic. Then they had to flip from the peacetime seal to the wartime seal because the peacetime seal is really a fraud time seal. The fraud is the illusion of peace while we ain't never not been at war. Ever since these people came over here, there's not a 20-year stretch where there's not a major war going on that they got their nose in. They got their nose in every hog killing come up, and we taking the credit for it because we not stepping up and saying enough is enough. You ain't got to do no marching. Divorce yourself from the system. But you got to do it in mass. Everybody got to participate that know who they are. The ones who don't know who they are, you can't expect them to be no good for nothing, no way. They already confused, lost in the sauce. Right? So we got all of the mental power and prowess to restore everything on the land. We have the leaderships and the councils of elders capable of giving us wise advice to overcome the opposition before us, but we first got to take them back from the invaders who's squatting on the land masquerading as our government and as our law and law enforcement. None of them got nothing to do with us. All of them are foreign agents representing the foreign body politic under the power, auspices, authority, and jurisdiction of the Vatican and the Crown of England. The other ones lost their right. The French, the Spanish, they lost their rights in this war for America a long time ago. But believe me, they came first as gentry, right? When you go look and you look at the garb of the ones who claim to have purchased Manhattan for trinkets, they was wearing knickerbockers. You can't never forget that, because knickerbockers is a form of article of clothing that's not from over here. We never wore knickerbockers. We didn't wear buckle shoes. We wore moccasins. We wore leather bottom shoes, but they wasn't those box shoes with that big ass belt buckle on them either. That was European. So go back and look at the seals of New York, the seals of each one of the boroughs, and it'll tell you that you were being deceived into believing that you lost your land when you can't lose your land as long as you live on it. Shout out ODB, Old Dirty Bastard, Chief Crazy Horse, the baddest to ever do it. Shout out to the big Christopher Wallace, notorious sitting bull, sitting on his post. Took that public lashing like a man. Shouldn't have never let the enemy come in. Shout out to Tupac Amaru, motherfucker, ride or die. Da 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 da. For publicly lashing the chief that sat on the post while the rest of the chiefs was being blindsided and subjugated. Shout out to Raekwon the chief, aka Raekwon the chef. Shout out to the killer priest. Keep on killing them with the knowledge of self. You know what I'm saying? All these chiefs involved in this shit, we ain't all part of the same motherfucking clan, but we all part of the same motherfucking land. And when we realize that the enemy is just trying to get us convinced that we don't belong on our own land, all we got to do is stand together like the band of the hand. You dig? Now that's a black power fist for you. Knock your motherfucking ass straight. Yeah. So look, go back to the Harriet Tubman story. There's a famous quote from Harriet Tubman, and I want y'all to analyze this for a minute. She said, I could have saved more slaves had they known they were slaves. Let that marinate for a minute. Go back to what we said earlier about the heirs' property in the heritable lands, right? And then remember what she said. If they knew they were slaves, I could have saved more of them. They didn't know they were slaves. What did they think they were if they didn't think they were slaves? Right? What did they think they were? Did they think they was what? They thought they was in Brazil? What they thought they were, what they was doing at that place they called the plantation. Right? Think about that for a minute. She could have saved more slaves had they known they were slaves. Listen, when you go back and read, now remember, they wasn't allowed to teach us to read or write. They wasn't allowed to sell us any property. They not allowed to do banking with us. They robbing Big Mama banks as outlaws to shut them down. And we had the largest heirs property out of any other ethnic group on the land, and they don't know they slaves. Remember that part. Now, remember, before it was called the Big House, it was called Big Mama House, and it was the family farm and the family headquarters. So she's going to save somebody from being a slave from their family farm that's been infiltrated. But that's why they don't know they slaves. They don't know they slaves because they living on their heirs' land, and their heirs' land is being ran by a foreigner. I could have saved more of them had they known they were slaves. They wasn't slaves. A prisoner of war. They were enslaved, and being a slave is not the same thing. Being captured as the spoils of war and being a slave is not the same thing if you don't never stop fighting. Okay, now reclassification comes in, right? Everything is handed down on the land through the mother's line. The heritable heirs' rights comes through the mother's line of heritability. Right? This is why they want you to tie to a nationality, because you tie into your status as black in law or civilly mortis as a national, because they saying that the Plymouth wreck caused all of the ships that was docked across the land, so to speak, which was the sea to shiny sea concept of the song. The sea to shiny sea was the expanse of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction over the land to connect the Atlantic and Pacific boundary lines and tie them together. We ain't paying attention. We just think we is. And then if some crazy nigga like Rod Hayes come along and say, have y'all noticed this and gave it any thought? Let's examine this for a minute. All of the tribes over here, the male chiefs protected the clan, and the female chiefs gave him the criteria by which they knew that they need to be protected. Right? So if we didn't have a matriarchal council to see what was morally repugnant to us as a collective, then the chief had to figure it out on his own. We had war. Everybody got a piece. Everybody got a position. Everybody have to play their part in order for all of us to win as a collective. This is how you get one tribe marching the totem pole across the land, or several tribes posting that to reclaim DC in 2017. Then you have me giving them in 2019 public notices to cancel the contracts for treaty contracts for fraud and non-performance. Then you got Empress Redbird receiving the paperwork to verify that my part was done, tying me and her together in this struggle. Then you got Sipico, who put the Pope on public notice about the no longer following Vatican rule, going back to the Great Law. The Pope gives her a response by repealing the discovery doctrine, which is the foundational instrument of the slave system. Then we had the J16 committee, the shaman, one of the chiefs from the land, sent in the ceremonial shaman to occupy the Pelosi seat with a Republic flag behind the Admiralty flag in order for the Republic to seize it back from the water. Now it's back to the jurisdiction of the land, right? So you got a whole bunch of different tribes. You got the ceremonial Muskogee Creek under the direction of the Muskogee Creek, the Washita, and a few other clans, serving public notice on Atlanta and Cop City and the surrounding area. See, we be forgetting about that stuff, but we so busy trying to tell people who got rights to the land that we are stepping on allies in reckless behavior, right? We ain't worried about the allies. We worried about the enemies. We worried about the ones that's been infiltrating us, turning us against each other from the inside out. If you tear down a house divided, can't stand, right? So stop fighting them people. They came here to give you aid and assistance, and you can tell by how impoverished their reservation was. If they don't have no casino, they did not take sides with the enemy. Telling you that now. If they don't got casinos and they ain't getting no fat ass check from the government without having to work, they did not take sides with the enemy. Stop fighting them. Stop fighting them. That's the wrong fight. The ones who took sides with the enemy, that like to drive in their $250,000 cars wearing their $1,800 suits with their $5,000 gator skin shoes on, they live in upstate gated communities off the res, them the ones you need to be worried about. They ain't worried because they know that when you figure it out, you're going to attack the ones that look like them that came to help us. All of them didn't come to help, and all of them didn't come to hurt. It's two sides to this, the righteous and the unrighteous. Look at how the government treat the tribe, and you will know if the government have any respect for them or if they made an allegiance with us. This is why you had them all in Seminole Wars. They keep trying to tell y'all that we was the runaway slaves that joined the Seminole resistance. No, we wasn't. We was old Mississippian chiefs. We was old Alibaba chiefs from Alabama. We was Razorback chiefs coming in to fight this war and run these mothers off the land. And we ran into a situation where we was losing too many casualties on both sides. Ceasefire, conjure war, who gonna educate themselves above the condition, or who gonna allow themselves to be drowned in the dogma of the false doctrines. That's it. It's just that simple. Stop with the divide and conquer. We had the Irish Republic Army. We was sending them support over there to overthrow motherfuckers too. And they was sending us support over here when we was fighting England. They was fighting them too. The Irish has been one of the biggest allies to the tribes over here. And this is why they had free run of the Appalachians. That's where they wanted to set up their tribal camps. And now we treating them like they didn't fight on our behalf because the enemy got us thinking anybody that ain't dark as me or darker is the enemy, and nothing can be further for the truth. Look, Chief Warhorse darker than me, but my hair is nappy. Hers is straight, naturally. I got a nephew. They got naturally straight hair, and he's chocolate, darker than me. My brother over me got curly hair like a Puerto Rican. My brother under me hair, nappy like mine, but it's red. We got it all in the tribes. It's in the blood. We got the oldest blood and the representation in our blood of every clan on the planet. It's every woman with mitochondria on this planet has an uninterrupted mitochondrial line back to one of 12 or 13 women. The original bloodlines of the earth, the Grail blood, is the holy bloods of the great mothers, plural. The 13 tribes, which was the 12 daughters of Isis in her tribe. Isis had a set, and her 12 daughters all gave to different phenotypes, skin complexions, hair textures, heights. These daughters of Isis is the mothers of the earth, and they come in all skin tones. And we be fighting over the doctrines of men as if they some holy truth when they some holy bullshit. Even a lot of the pale-faced Jews took sides with us. We have a conjure woman in California. She's a Jewish lady. Been doing this for over 50 years, named Catherine Yorwood. But she was given and entrusted the secrets by elders in our community in order to give it back to us as our teacher. And then when we see her, we act like we can't read the doctrine she given us to know if she was sanctioned by a big mama on the land. Because we don't know how to look at that stuff no more. Because the 12-step detox from thinking that they call school and effed us up. All of the Irish ain't even yellow. Some of them by my complexion. The daughters of Scotia, they was with freckles. They was chocolate with freckles, or caramel with freckles and red hair, auburn red hair. And the daughter of Scotta was buttermilk complexion with fiery red hair. They still do a red hair festival, daughters of Scotta, to this day in Ireland. So anybody want to come up and chop it up with the chief? I'm about to let y'all up.